Hey guys, it's Marshall Mathers the fourth here, back to you today with another video. And in today's video, I will be talking today about the fact that I really wish and do believe that Eminem should have released his 8 Mile movie soundtrack album on October 27 in the year 2000 at the age of 28. 10 days after his 28th birthday, which he would have turned on October 17 in the year 2000. So obviously 10 days after October 17 of 2000 would have been October 27 of 2000. So on exactly October 27 in the year 2000, at the age of just 28 years old, is exactly when I really wish and do believe that Eminem should have released his 8 Mile movie soundtrack album, and that is the month, day, and especially year that I would have much rather preferred him to have released that movie soundtrack album of his. But that's not the main thing that I just wish would have been different about that movie soundtrack album of his. But more so than that, I really wish and do believe that he should have kept that movie soundtrack album of his specifically to mainly himself, D12, The Outsiders, Royce da 5'9", and Obi Trice, and maybe even some other underground Detroit rappers that he collaborated with while he was a underground up-and-coming rapper trying to make it into the rap music industry to become a famous rapper. And, you know, it's interesting because at the time, even when it actually was released, being unfortunately on October 29 of 2002, which sucks because Eminem would have been 30 years old at the time of when he released it. Then is the rapper Nas, who was on one of the songs on Eminem's 8 Mile movie soundtrack album. Nas told Eminem, don't give your 8 Mile movie soundtrack away. Why do that? It's a movie about you. It's a movie about your life. And obviously, that's a very good argument to make that Nas made way back in like 2002 to Eminem, because obviously his 8 Mile movie is about him before he was a famous rapper, when he was an underground battle rapper, and when he was trying to make it as a famous rapper. And, you know, the sad thing is, all the other rappers that Eminem had featured on his 8 Mile movie soundtrack, like Nas, Jay-Z, and a bunch of other rappers, they had no idea who he was before he was famous. They didn't even know he existed. They had no clue who he was, or where he lived, or if he even existed. And not to mention the obvious fact that they had nothing to do with him before he was famous. And so, to Nas, he was confused as to why Eminem wanted to give away most of his 8 Mile movie soundtrack album instead of it being mainly just him and D12 on that album of his, which would have made a lot more logical sense. Because again, it's a movie about Eminem's life before he became a famous rapper, during the time he was an underground up-and-coming rapper, trying to make it as a famous rapper. So obviously, it would have made the most sense, the most logical sense, for Eminem to not have done the stupid idiot thing and give away most of his 8 Mile movie soundtrack album like he actually did, unfortunately. But it would have made more sense if he would have kept that movie soundtrack album to himself and D12 for the most part. But I wouldn't have just wanted the 8 Mile movie soundtrack album to just be Eminem and D12 and that's it. I would have wanted it to be like Eminem, D12, The Outsiders, Royce da 5'9", Obi Trice, and maybe if there would have still been room, some of the underground Detroit rappers that Eminem collaborated with when he was an underground battle rapper trying to make it as a famous rapper. And I think that would have been awesome. And not only that, but another thing that I think would have been awesome is if Eminem had 4 music videos, or at least like 3 music videos for his 8 Mile movie soundtrack album, where he would have been in every single one of them and actually have been like solo Eminem songs. Like, I mean, that would have just been so much better. So much better than what actually did end up happening, unfortunately. And, you know, it just pisses me the fuck off that Eminem had to be such a moron and give away most of his 8 Mile movie soundtrack album to rappers who had nothing to do with him before he was a famous rapper, who didn't even know where he was or if he existed, and had no clue that he was even an underground up-and-coming rapper. And instead of having that movie soundtrack album be mainly him, D12, The Outsiders, Royce da 5'9", Obi Trice, and maybe if there would have still been room, other underground Detroit rappers that he collaborated with when he was an underground battle rapper trying to make it as a famous rapper. That is what should have happened. That is what should have happened. And that is exactly what Eminem should have done if he would have been thinking straight at the time. But unfortunately, it's obvious and clear that he wasn't thinking straight. And that he was being a damn fool. And I just hate the fact that Eminem chose to give away most of his 8 Mile movie soundtrack album to rappers who had nothing to do with him before he was famous, who didn't even know who he was or if he even existed, had no idea or clue that he was an underground battle rapper trying to make it as a famous rapper. Trying to make it as the first, like, biggest white famous rapper in the rap industry. And it's just heartbreaking that what he could have and should have done with his 8 Mile movie soundtrack album, he chose to not do, and instead chose to do something dumb instead. But anyways, that's all I really wanted to say in this video, except if there is one thing that I want to say, one last thing in this video really quick before I stop this video, is that I wish Eminem's 8 Mile movie soundtrack album would have been at least 18 tracks. Like 50 Cent's Get Rich or Die Trying movie soundtrack album, which is way better than Eminem's piss poor 8 Mile movie soundtrack album. 50 Cent had 18 tracks in total. Eminem on his 8 Mile soundtrack album only has 16. And 50 Cent's Get Rich or Die Trying movie soundtrack album is much more superior. than to Eminem's 8 Mile movie soundtrack album. And why? Because 50 Cent, unlike Eminem, made the smart and wise decision of keeping his Get Rich or Die Trying movie soundtrack album specifically to himself and, of course, his rap group at the time, G Unit, instead of giving away his movie soundtrack album to rappers who had nothing to do with 50 Cent before he was famous and didn't even know who he was or if he even existed, for that matter. And that is exactly what Eminem should have done, but instead he didn't, unfortunately, in the reality of things. But that's all I wanted to say in today's video. Let me know what you all think in the comment section down below. I'm out.